What if one morning you opened the news and discovered that every honor, every title, every symbol of respect that once defined you had been erased, transferred, and handed to someone else? Not just anyone, but someone you barely knew, a man loyal to the very institution you had turned your back on. Sounds like the plot of a Shakespearean tragedy, doesn't it? But this isn't fiction. This is the royal family's latest move, and it has left the world gasping. Because King Charles, father, monarch, strategist, has finally done what many thought he would never dare. He has taken everything that Prince Harry once held close, the prestige, the symbolism, the roles that once tied him to crown and country, and placed them, like jewels in a crown, onto the head of Sir Timothy. Yes, Sir Timothy, a figure often overlooked, suddenly elevated into the very position Harry once considered his birthright. And in Montecito, California, the fallout is nothing short of chaos. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me ask you, can you imagine the silence in Harry's Montecito mansion when this news first broke? The headlines flashing on phones, the whispers from neighbors, the buzzing of paparazzi drones circling overhead. The kind of silence where the weight of betrayal is too heavy for words. That silence speaks louder than the laughter of Hollywood parties, louder than the promises of freedom Harry once proclaimed. It is the silence of a man realizing that the bridge back to his family has not only burned but been demolished, brick by brick, by the king himself. Why does this matter right now? Because the monarchy is not just a family. It's a machine of power, image, and legacy. And in the fragile era of King Charles's reign, every move is calculated, every gesture loaded with meaning. By choosing Sir Timothy, Charles isn't just handing out titles. He's sending a message. To Harry, to Meghan, to William, to the entire world. And that message is brutal in its clarity. Loyalty is rewarded, rebellion is punished. Let's rewind for a moment. Remember Harry's bold exit? The infamous Megxit? He and Meghan stepping away from the royal family in pursuit of independence, claiming they wanted to carve out their own destiny. The world was split. Some cheered them on as modern-day revolutionaries. Others scorned them as ungrateful deserters. But through it all, one question lingered. How far would the monarchy go to protect itself? Today, we have the answer. Because this isn't about simple titles. It's about legacy. About the monarchy's survival in an age where scandal spreads faster than statecraft. Charles, the once patient prince, now king, understands that perception is everything. And what better way to strengthen the monarchy's image than by replacing a son who fled with a knight who stayed? Now, you might be wondering, why Sir Timothy? Who is this man who now walks in Harry's old shoes? Why him, of all people, and why now? That is where the story takes its sharpest turn. Sir Timothy is not a prince, not born into the Windsor bloodline, not a man who was ever destined to wear the golden chains of royal duty. He is, instead, the embodiment of something the monarchy prizes above all else: unwavering loyalty. The kind of loyalty Harry and Meghan could never muster once they stepped across the Atlantic. But before we dive deeper into Sir Timothy's role, let's pause and picture Montecito again. Imagine the reaction not just inside the Sussex household, but across the entire neighborhood. Hollywood's elite, accustomed to whispers of divorces, secret deals, and sudden scandals, suddenly find themselves front-row witnesses to one of the greatest royal dramas of modern times. Can you hear the murmurs at dinner parties? Did you hear what Charles did to Harry? Have you seen Meghan's face since the news broke? The Montecito mansion, once a symbol of Harry's freedom, now feels like a gilded cage of humiliation. And yet, the irony couldn't be sharper. Harry left to escape the pressures of royal life. But here he is, thousands of miles away, still chained to the monarchy's every move. Every headline, every decree, every royal reshuffle. He cannot escape it. The palace is still in his shadow, still dictating the rhythm of his existence. That's the cruel truth. You can leave the palace, but the palace never leaves you. Do you feel that tension? The tug of war between freedom and duty? Between family and betrayal? That's the heartbeat of this story. And King Charles, with a single stroke of decision, has turned up the volume for the entire world to hear. Now, let's be honest. This isn't just about Harry and Meghan. This is about us, the public. Because whether we admit it or not, the royal family isn't just their family. It's our soap opera, our drama, our distraction, our fascination. We project onto them our own struggles with loyalty, with family conflict, with the longing for acceptance. That's why this moment matters. That's why the world can't look away. And yet, questions swirl. Was this Charles's plan all along? Did he wait for the perfect moment to strike, knowing that Harry's influence was fading and Meghan's Hollywood dreams teetering? Or was this a desperate move, a last-ditch attempt to reassert control over a monarchy riddled with fractures? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. The decision has cracked open a fault line that runs from Buckingham Palace straight through the heart of California. Here's something else to consider. For every royal watcher who believes Charles was justified, there are just as many who see cruelty in this act. A father stripping his son, not just of titles, but of dignity. Imagine the private pain behind the polished palace announcements. Imagine being Harry, watching your replacement paraded before the world, a reminder that the monarchy you left behind has not only moved on, but is thriving without you. Does that sting? Does it breed regret? Or does it spark defiance? That's the beauty and the tragedy of this story. We don't yet know Harry's next move. Will he fight back with words, interviews, memoirs? Or will he retreat further into the Californian hills, silenced by the weight of humiliation? These are the questions that keep us watching, that keep us glued to every new headline, every flicker of expression on Meghan's face. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because to truly understand the magnitude of this bombshell, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to trace the careful steps of a king who waited decades for his crown, only to face a fractured family the moment he finally ascended. We need to uncover why Sir Timothy, this quiet, loyal figure, was chosen to inherit not just titles, but trust. And we need to pull back the curtain on what this all means for the future of the monarchy itself. So stay with me, because this story is only just beginning. The shockwaves from this decision are still rippling through palaces, newsrooms, and Californian mansions alike. And the deeper we dig, the more we realize this isn't just about one man losing titles. It's about the future of royalty in a world that no longer bows easily. And as we turn the page to the first chapter of this saga, one question looms larger than all the rest. Why did King Charles choose Sir Timothy over his own flesh and blood? Because what comes next will not only answer that question, it will shake the very foundation of what we think we know about loyalty, legacy, and betrayal. The decision didn't happen overnight. It never does in the monarchy. Every move, every announcement, every shift of titles is weighed like gold on a scale. And King Charles, after decades of waiting for his own crown, knows the stakes better than anyone, which is why this moment, this decision to strip Harry of what remained of his royal status and hand it to Sir Timothy, feels less like a whim and more like a masterstroke in a game of royal chess. Ask yourself this. What kind of father willingly replaces his own son in the line of tradition? What kind of king risks the heartbreak of family scandal just to make a point? The answer, though cold, is simple. A monarch who understands that survival of the crown depends not on sentiment, but on strategy. From the moment Charles ascended the throne, he was burdened with one pressing truth. The monarchy is fragile. Scandals had bruised it. The younger generation, Harry and Meghan in particular, had undermined its mystique. And whispers about whether the institution could endure in the 21st century grew louder every year. Charles knew his reign would be judged not just by his policies, but by how he managed his fractured family. So why this, why now? Let's peel back the layers. First, public opinion. In Britain, Harry's image has plummeted. Polls consistently show a decline in his favorability, especially after the release of his memoir, the interviews, and the ongoing rift with William. To many, he embodies betrayal, the prince who aired the family's dirty laundry for profit and applause. Contrast that with Sir Timothy, a figure of loyalty, of service, of silence. A man who never sought the spotlight, yet remained steadfast in his duties. The monarchy thrives on symbols, and Charles knows this. By transferring Harry's titles to Sir Timothy, the king is telling the public, we reward loyalty. We punish disloyalty. It's a message as old as monarchy itself, dressed in the modern garb of a press release. Second, the palace machine. Insiders whisper of long meetings, of advisors urging Charles to act decisively. Some feared that leaving Harry with even a shred of royal legitimacy would undermine the institution's credibility. How could the monarchy stand tall if a prince who abandoned it still held titles meant to represent honor and duty? The crown needed to draw a line in the sand. And Charles, though reluctant in some ways, knew the line had to be drawn in bold ink. Third, the legacy question. Charles is not a young man. His reign may not be as long as his mother's, and he knows every decision he makes now will be judged as part of his legacy. Does he want to be remembered as the monarch who let rebellion weaken the crown, or as the monarch who restored discipline, who made the monarchy appear strong, unyielding, decisive? History favors the latter. But let's not ignore the personal sting. For years, Charles has watched his son grow distant, critical, rebellious. The interviews where Harry accused the institution of cruelty. The memoir where family secrets spilled across the pages. The Netflix deals, the Hollywood glitz, the speeches about breaking free from the shackles of royal life. Each moment, each word, was a thorn in Charles's side. And when the opportunity came to strip Harry of what remained, perhaps there was a sliver of personal satisfaction in the act. Can you picture the scene inside Buckingham Palace? A polished oak table, advisors leaning forward, documents laid out. The king, pen in hand, signing away centuries of tradition from his son's shoulders and bestowing them upon another. Outside, the palace remains quiet, its gates tall and silent. But inside, history shifts with the scratch of ink on parchment. Yet this wasn't simply about punishment. No, Charles had a larger vision in mind. He understood that the monarchy must adapt or die. In a world of social media scandals and 24-hour news cycles, perception is everything. And perception demanded that someone dependable carry the torch. That someone was Sir Timothy. It's worth asking, why not William? Why not distribute Harry's roles among other royals? Because William already carries enough. He is heir, husband, father, the future of the monarchy. To burden him further would risk overexposure. And Charles knows the power of balance. William must remain untarnished, focused on his destiny, while someone else steps into Harry's abandoned shoes. And so, Sir Timothy, a man with no thirst for fame, no Hollywood ambitions, no desire to tell all, a man whose loyalty shines brighter than any crown jewel. In Sir Timothy, Charles found not just a replacement, but a symbol, a living reminder that the crown values service above bloodline, loyalty above rebellion. But imagine, for a moment, Harry's perspective. From thousands of miles away, watching as the titles he once bore are ceremonially draped over another. The military honors he fought to keep, gone. The royal roles he cherished, erased. The Duke of Sussex replaced by a knight who never imagined such elevation. For Harry, it's more than humiliation, it's erasure. And for Charles, that erasure is the very point. Here's the contradiction that makes this story so fascinating. Charles, the father, might feel pain. Charles, the king, cannot afford it. The two identities collide in this moment, and only one survives. The king wins. The father is left behind. Now, was this all part of a long-laid plan? Many believe so. From the moment Harry and Meghan announced their departure, palace insiders say Charles began laying the groundwork. Stripping titles wasn't immediate. He waited, calculated, observed. He allowed the couple to make missteps, to alienate public opinion. And once their popularity dipped low enough, he struck. No sympathy left to protect them, no public outrage to shield them. The timing was precise. The move also served as a warning shot to others. Think about it. If even the king's own son could be stripped of everything, what chance does anyone else have of defiance? It was a message not just to Harry, but to every royal insider, every extended family member, every advisor. Loyalty or exile, the choice is yours. And yet, beneath the strategy lies a darker question. Did Charles, in making this move, further fracture the family beyond repair? Did he sacrifice his son's dignity for the survival of an institution? Can the monarchy truly thrive when its wounds are self-inflicted? This is where the story deepens. Because while Charles may see himself as the strategist restoring order, others see him as the executioner of his own son's legacy. The image of a father stripping his child of honor is a haunting one that will linger long after the press clippings fade. Still, Charles knew the gamble he was taking. He knew the headlines would scream betrayal, that Harry and Meghan's camp would spin this as cruelty. And yet, he went ahead. Because in his mind, the crown outweighs the individual. The monarchy must survive, even if the family breaks. It's ruthless. It's cold. It's calculated. But isn't that what monarchy has always been? A system of survival, cloaked in tradition and jewels, built not on sentiment, but on sacrifice. Charles simply played the role he was born to play. Now, let's circle back to the audience. What do you think? Was Charles justified in choosing loyalty over blood? Or was this the ultimate betrayal of a father's love? These are the questions that keep us watching, that keep us hooked on every twist of this saga. And yet, the most pressing question remains unanswered. Why Sir Timothy? Why elevate him above all others, and why now? Because while Charles's calculated move set the stage, the choice of Sir Timothy was no accident. It was deliberate. It was symbolic. And as we peel back the layers of who Sir Timothy really is, we begin to understand the full magnitude of what Harry has lost. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Who is Sir Timothy? That's the question echoing through newsrooms, dinner tables, and royal-watching blogs across the globe. Because while everyone knows Prince Harry, the rebellious son, the Hollywood prince, the runaway duke, very few know the man who has suddenly stepped into his abandoned shoes. And that's exactly why the choice is so fascinating. Sir Timothy isn't a household name. He doesn't grace the covers of magazines. He doesn't give interviews dripping with scandal or memoirs filled with secrets. In fact, for most of his career, he has existed in the shadows, quiet, steady, reliable. The kind of man who keeps his head down while others chase the spotlight. And in the royal family, that very quality is golden. Let me ask you this. In a world obsessed with celebrity and attention, what's more valuable? A prince who exposes the monarchy's flaws, or a knight who never says a word? The answer, at least to King Charles, is obvious. Silence is priceless. Loyalty is irreplaceable. And Sir Timothy embodies both. So who is he? Let's peel back the layers. Sir Timothy has been part of the royal orbit for decades, though rarely center stage. He is the kind of figure often referred to in hushed tones, a trusted confidant, a loyal servant, a man who understands discretion. His career has been one of steady service, quietly ensuring that royal traditions are maintained, duties are fulfilled, and scandals are avoided. Unlike Harry, he never courted controversy. Unlike Meghan, he never courted fame. Instead, he built his reputation on something rare in the modern world: consistency. Picture him at royal events, not in the front row, but close enough to matter. Not giving speeches, but ensuring those who did were prepared. Not photographed with Hollywood stars, but quietly bowing, shaking hands, performing duties without fuss. For the palace, this is the ideal. For Charles, it's the ultimate reassurance. But here's where the story sharpens. Sir Timothy's rise to prominence didn't happen by accident. It was earned, brick by brick, through decades of service and a reputation for loyalty so strong it became his defining characteristic. Insiders whisper that Charles has long admired him, long trusted him in ways he could not always trust his own family. And isn't that the bitter irony? A father trusting a knight more than his own son. Think about the symbolism. In elevating Sir Timothy, Charles isn't just rewarding loyalty. He's rewriting the narrative of what matters in the modern monarchy. Blood no longer guarantees privilege. Behavior does. Lineage may open doors, but loyalty keeps them open. And by handing Harry's titles to Sir Timothy, Charles has drawn that line in history. Let's pause here and imagine the contrast between Harry and Sir Timothy. Harry, rebellious, outspoken, restless. Sir Timothy, reserved, disciplined, unwavering. Harry, Montecito mansions, Netflix deals, memoir revelations. Sir Timothy, polished suits, quiet duties, unbroken silence. It's as though Charles looked at his son and saw everything the monarchy could no longer afford, then looked at Sir Timothy and saw everything it needed to survive. And yet, here's the question no one dares to ask aloud. Does Sir Timothy even want this? For decades, he played the role of the steady shadow. Now, suddenly, he finds himself thrust into the spotlight, his name splashed across headlines. Does he relish the honor, or does he carry it like a burden? Only he knows. But one thing is certain, he will never say it out loud. His silence is his shield, and it is the very reason Charles chose him. This is what makes him fascinating. In a family where everyone talks, whether through interviews, books, or carefully planted leaks, Sir Timothy talks least. His discretion has made him indispensable. When the palace needed someone to absorb Harry's abandoned duties, there was no one more fitting. But let's not paint him as a simple figure. There is complexity here, layers that make his elevation even more symbolic. Sir Timothy is not of royal blood. He is not a Windsor, not a descendant of queens and kings. He is, in essence, an outsider. And yet, by placing him in Harry's stead, Charles has made a bold statement. Service is greater than birthright. Imagine the sting for Harry, who once believed his royal lineage guaranteed him a place at the table. Now, that seat has been given to a man who earned it not by blood, but by loyalty. Here's a twist worth considering. Some royal insiders suggest that Sir Timothy's rise was long in the making. That Charles had always envisioned him playing a larger role. That his decades of quiet service weren't just background work, but preparation. That this moment, though shocking to us, was inevitable to those within palace walls. If that's true, then Harry's downfall was not just the result of his rebellion, but the final step in a plan Charles had been quietly nurturing. The public, of course, is divided. To some, Sir Timothy is a breath of fresh air, a reminder that honor can be earned rather than inherited. To others, he is a symbol of cruelty, proof that Charles would rather elevate a servant than reconcile with his son. And that debate, that tension, is what makes this story so gripping, because it forces us to ask, what do we value more? Tradition or loyalty? Bloodline or behavior? Let's go deeper. Imagine Montecito again, the night the news broke. Harry and Meghan, scrolling through headlines, seeing Sir Timothy's name beside words like honor, duty, titles. Do you think they recognized him? Do you think Harry thought back to times when Sir Timothy stood quietly in the background at palace events? The sting is sharper because Harry knows him, knows that this man, once peripheral, is now the chosen one. The replacement, the reminder that the monarchy has moved on. And what of Meghan? Rumors swirl that she sees this as not just an attack on Harry, but on her too. Because Sir Timothy's elevation highlights the very qualities she and Harry rejected: silence, loyalty, subservience to the crown. It's a contrast that paints their choice in harsher light. But perhaps the most fascinating angle is this. Sir Timothy didn't ask for this, but his very existence, his loyalty, his discretion, made him inevitable. In the grand chessboard of the monarchy, he was the piece Charles had been saving, the quiet knight waiting in the wings. And now, he's on the board, replacing a prince who thought himself irreplaceable. So where does this leave us? We know who Sir Timothy is, the loyal servant turned symbolic replacement. We know why Charles chose him: to reward loyalty, to punish rebellion, to secure the monarchy's image. And we know what it means for Harry: humiliation, erasure, the bitter taste of being replaced. But what we don't yet know is the true cost of this decision. Because every move has consequences. Every decision ripples outward. And as Sir Timothy steps into Harry's shoes, the weight of expectation will press down harder than ever. Can he bear it? Can he embody the loyalty that Charles prizes, without faltering under the pressure of sudden fame? Because if Sir Timothy fails, if the quiet knight proves less sturdy than he seems, then Charles's entire strategy could crumble. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest irony of all. But for now, one truth stands above the rest. Sir Timothy has been chosen. Harry has been replaced. And the monarchy has sent its message loud and clear. The only question left is this: what exactly did Harry lose when those titles slipped from his grasp? Because the answer isn't just ceremonial. It's personal, historical, and devastating. And as we move into the next chapter, we will uncover the full weight of those titles, and why their transfer to Sir Timothy is the ultimate insult. But what came next would make Harry's world collapse even further. Once upon a time, Prince Harry's name carried the weight of history. He wasn't just Harry, the man. He was His Royal Highness Prince Henry of Wales. He was the Duke of Sussex, the Earl of Dumbarton, Baron Kilkeel, a prince by blood, a soldier by service, a symbol of duty and tradition. Every title he bore was more than just words. It was a thread in the fabric of the monarchy, stitched carefully through centuries of tradition. And now, those threads have unraveled. The fabric has torn. And Harry, once wrapped in the ceremonial cloak of royalty, now stands exposed, stripped, and replaced. But to truly understand the magnitude of what he has lost, and why Charles's decision to give those titles to Sir Timothy is so devastating, we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when Harry was more than just a rebellious young prince. Back to when he was the crown's golden boy. Do you remember those days? The cheeky, fiery-haired prince who captured the public's heart? He was Diana's boy, William's brother, the mischievous royal who gave the monarchy a touch of humanity. His titles weren't just honorary, they carried meaning. The Duke of Sussex title, for example, wasn't plucked out of thin air. It was steeped in history, tied to the crown's legacy, bestowed on Harry by Queen Elizabeth herself on his wedding day. It was meant to signal his future, his role as a bridge between tradition and modernity. Then there was the military dimension. Harry wasn't just a ceremonial soldier. He served. He wore the uniform, flew Apache helicopters, walked among comrades in Afghanistan. He earned respect not by birthright, but by bravery. And those military titles, Captain General of the Royal Marines, Honorary Air Commandant, Commodore-in-Chief, were symbols of that service. They weren't gifts, they were acknowledgments of his sacrifice. So, when Harry and Meghan stepped away from the royal family in 2020, the question of what to do with those titles became a matter of fierce debate. Should he keep them, even if he was no longer a working royal? Should he lose them as a consequence of walking away? The palace hesitated, stripped some, left others. For years, Harry existed in a strange limbo, no longer fully royal, but not entirely stripped either. A man caught between two worlds. That limbo ended with Charles's decision. Let's pause and ask, why do titles matter so much? After all, they're just words, aren't they? But in the monarchy, words are power. Titles open doors, command respect, carry history. A title is not just a name, it's a passport to influence. When Harry lost his titles, he lost far more than ceremonial ribbons. He lost authority. He lost his tether to the very institution that defined him from birth. Think about the irony. Harry wanted freedom. He wanted to be more than just a title, more than just a cog in the royal machine. But in leaving, he discovered that titles weren't just shackles, they were shields. They protected him, elevated him, gave him legitimacy. Without them, he is not His Royal Highness. He is simply Harry. And in the world of monarchy, that is the cruelest demotion. Now contrast that with Sir Timothy, a man who never expected titles, never sought prestige, suddenly inherits them all. For him, each title is not a loss, but a gain. Not a burden, but an honor. The Duke of Sussex, once associated with Harry and Meghan's rebellion, is now recast as a symbol of loyalty through Sir Timothy. The military patronages, once Harry's pride, now shine on the chest of a man who never wavered. The transformation is complete. And what about the public? Do they notice the weight of these titles? Absolutely. To the world, the Duke of Sussex was synonymous with Harry and Meghan. Their foundation, their branding, their very identity was tied to that dukedom. By transferring it, Charles has struck at the heart of their public image. Imagine the sting of watching your brand, your identity, your legacy repurposed in the hands of another. Here's a surprising fact. Titles have always been political tools in the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth herself used them strategically, rewarding loyalty, binding allies, securing legacy. When she granted Harry the Duke of Sussex title, it was a gesture of trust, a blessing for his marriage, a sign of confidence in his future. And now, Charles has undone that gesture. He has rewritten history, turning what was once a gift into a punishment. But the question remains, was Harry ever truly prepared to carry the weight of his titles? His critics argue no. That he was always restless, always resistant, always yearning for a different path. His supporters argue yes, that he earned them, especially the military honors, through real sacrifice. This is where the debate cuts deepest, between duty and desire, between tradition and independence. Let's consider Meghan's perspective here. Titles weren't just symbols for Harry, they were shields for her too. As Duchess of Sussex, Meghan was legitimized in a world that often rejected her. It gave her a place, a rank, a protection against critics who saw her as an outsider. Without it, she is Meghan Markle, actress turned wife turned controversial figure. The stripping of titles hits her as hard as it hits Harry, because it removes the one symbol that tied her to the institution she never fully belonged to. And then there's the global dimension. Internationally, titles carry weight. In the US, in Hollywood, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, isn't just a name. It's a brand, a calling card, a headline magnet. Remove the titles, and suddenly the allure shifts. Deals, interviews, appearances, they all lose a little shine. The practical impact is enormous. Charles's decision wasn't just personal, it was financial. It cut into Harry and Meghan's influence, their brand, their future. Can you see the precision of this move now? By removing the titles, Charles didn't just strip Harry of honor. He stripped him of leverage. He weakened him, not just emotionally, but socially, financially, strategically. Every angle of Harry's life is now touched by this loss. And yet, what makes it sting even more is the contrast. Harry lost what Sir Timothy gained. The same titles that once symbolized Harry's rebellion now symbolize Sir Timothy's loyalty. The Duke of Sussex is no longer a symbol of Hollywood independence. It is a symbol of steadfast tradition. The military honors are no longer tied to a soldier-turned-celebrity. They are tied to a knight who never betrayed the crown. It is as if Charles has rewritten history in real time. Now, here's where it gets even sharper. Harry's titles represented not just his past, but his potential. They were stepping stones for a future role in the monarchy, should he have chosen to embrace it. By removing them, Charles hasn't just punished Harry for the present. He has closed the door to his future. Harry cannot return. The bridge is gone. This, more than anything, is the devastating truth. Titles are not easily restored. Once lost, they are rarely regained. And by giving them to another, Charles has made it final. Harry's chapter in the monarchy is closed. Permanently. So, let's ask again, what did Harry lose? Not just names. Not just symbols. He lost identity. He lost legacy. He lost future. And perhaps most painful of all, he lost them to someone who represents everything he rejected. Now imagine Harry sitting with Meghan in Montecito, staring at the news. Imagine the silence, the anger, the heartbreak. Imagine the realization sinking in, that the very titles he once took for granted are now badges of loyalty on another man's chest. And here's the cliffhanger, the twist that makes this story so unbearable. Losing the titles wasn't just a personal blow. It triggered something much deeper, much more volatile, inside Meghan. Because while Harry grieved the loss, Meghan began plotting the response. And what she did next would turn a royal punishment into a Hollywood counterstrike. But that's the story we uncover in the next chapter. The palace might have announced it with a carefully worded statement, polished by advisors, smoothed by lawyers, softened by courtiers. But behind the white walls of the Montecito mansion, there was nothing polished, nothing smooth, nothing soft. The news of King Charles transferring Harry's titles to Sir Timothy landed like a thunderclap, and the shockwaves shook the Sussex household to its core. And the first, most visceral reaction? Meghan's. She has always been the fighter, the strategist, the one who reads the battlefield before Harry even knows he's standing in one. To the outside world, she is composed, poised, smiling on red carpets. But behind closed doors, those smiles drop. The controlled tone shifts. Meghan's reaction to Charles's announcement was not calm acceptance. It was fire. Imagine the scene. The sprawling Montecito mansion, manicured lawns, ocean views, the quiet hum of Californian luxury. Inside, phones buzz, notifications explode, news channels flicker across screens. Harry sits, stunned, staring at the words he never thought he would read. His titles, his honors, his legacy, gone. And Meghan? She's pacing. Her voice sharp, her words rapid, her frustration palpable. Of course he did it, she might say. Of course this is how they punish you. They couldn't stand that we walked away, so now they're rewriting the story. Erasing you. Erasing us. Her anger isn't just at Charles. It's at the entire system. The monarchy she once tried to embrace, the family she once tried to join, the institution that made her feel like an outsider. For Meghan, this isn't just about titles, it's about validation. About being seen, being respected, being acknowledged. Losing the titles feels like a final rejection, not just of Harry, but of her too. But Meghan is not the kind of woman who simply collapses under pressure. No, pressure is fuel. Anger is strategy. And so, Even in the heat of shock, her mind begins to move. The wheels start turning. She knows that if the monarchy plays chess, she must play poker. If Charles wants to silence them with symbolism, she will fight back with narrative. And that's where the story sharpens. Because Meghan's reaction wasn't just emotional, it was tactical. Think about her history. From Hollywood actress to royal duchess to media entrepreneur, Meghan has always understood the power of story. She knows that perception shapes reality. And she knows that Charles's move wasn't just about stripping Harry of titles. It was about shaping the story. A story where Harry is diminished, forgotten, replaced. Meghan cannot, will not, allow that story to stand unchallenged. So what does she do? She begins to plan. Behind closed doors, in quiet strategy sessions, Meghan considers her options. Another interview? Another documentary? A new foundation initiative that reframes their image as global changemakers? Every possibility is on the table. Because in Meghan's world, silence is surrender, and surrender is never an option. But let's not forget the personal dimension here. Meghan's fury is fueled not just by strategy, but by emotion. She sees the pain in Harry's eyes, the way he slumps in his chair, the way his voice falters as he processes the humiliation. And for Meghan, who has always cast herself as his protector, his partner, his defender, this is intolerable. She cannot watch him suffer without responding. She won't. Now, here's where the contradictions come in. To some, Meghan's reaction will be painted as manipulative, as though she's exploiting Harry's pain to fuel her own agenda. To others, it will be painted as loyalty, as though she's standing by her man, ready to fight anyone who threatens him. The truth, as always, is layered. Meghan is both strategist and spouse, both fighter and partner. And in this moment, those roles fuse into one. Behind closed doors, Meghan's anger begins to crystallize into resolve. She tells Harry, perhaps gently, perhaps fiercely, that this is not the end, that they can reshape this narrative, reclaim their dignity, reassert their influence. She reminds him that titles may be stripped, but identity cannot be erased, that the world still sees him as Diana's son, as the soldier prince, as the man who broke free. And here's the irony. In trying to erase Harry, Charles may have reignited Meghan's determination to elevate him once more. Let's picture the scene again. The Montecito mansion, now buzzing with phone calls to PR teams, advisors, friends in Hollywood. Meghan drafting statements, rejecting others, considering how and when to respond. Should they speak out immediately with righteous fury? Or wait, let the public simmer in outrage, and then strike with precision? Every option is debated. Every word is weighed. Meanwhile, Harry remains torn. His instinct is to retreat, to avoid confrontation, to nurse his wounds privately. But Meghan pushes, reminds him that silence is exactly what the monarchy wants. That by disappearing, he confirms their narrative. He becomes the forgotten prince. She won't allow it. Here's where Meghan's Hollywood instincts kick in. She knows that timing is everything. Too soon, and it looks reactive. Too late, and the moment is lost. So she crafts a plan. Not just for a statement, but for a campaign. A series of moves that will reframe the story, recast Harry not as the rejected son, but as the resilient survivor. And yet, beneath all this strategy, the personal pain lingers. Meghan's fury is laced with sadness, because no matter how strong, how strategic, how resilient, they cannot change one fact. The titles are gone. The erasure is complete. The monarchy has made its move, and no amount of spin can undo it. That is the wound she cannot heal. Still, Meghan knows something the monarchy often underestimates: the power of public sympathy. While Charles may win the battle of tradition, Meghan believes she can win the battle of perception. And perception, in today's world, is often more powerful than tradition. Now, let's widen the lens. How did those in Montecito react? Neighbors whisper that the Sussex household was unusually tense. Staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Visitors came and went, some of them media consultants, others trusted friends. The atmosphere was electric with urgency, with the sense that something big was brewing. And the press? They smelled blood. Paparazzi swarmed, journalists speculated, tabloids screamed headlines about Meghan's fury. Some painted her as defiant, others as vengeful. But all agreed on one thing: Meghan would not stay silent. And she didn't. Though the official response may have taken time, Meghan's fingerprints were all over it. Subtle leaks to friendly outlets. Carefully crafted words in the mouths of allies. Hints dropped into the media stream that painted Harry not as a victim, but as a wronged hero. A prince betrayed by his father, yet standing strong with his wife. This is Meghan's true power. Not titles, not crowns, not ceremonies, but narrative. And in this battle, narrative is everything. But here's the twist. Meghan's counterstrike, as powerful as it was, carried risks. Because for every supporter who saw her as a loyal wife defending her husband, there were critics who saw her as the instigator, the manipulator, the architect of Harry's downfall. By fighting back, she risked reinforcing the very criticisms she has battled for years. And that's where the tension lies. Meghan's reaction behind closed doors was fire, fury, strategy. But in bringing that fire to the public, she risked being burned herself. So where does this leave us? With a Meghan more determined than ever, a Harry caught between humiliation and resistance, and a monarchy unmoved by their struggle. The stage is set for escalation, for a clash not just of titles, but of narratives. Because while Meghan may rage in private, her true weapon is public perception. And as she sharpened that weapon behind the closed doors of Montecito, she knew exactly where to strike next. But just as Meghan prepared her counterattack, something unexpected happened. Something outside her control, something that would bring the drama from the privacy of the Sussex mansion straight into the streets of Montecito. And what came next would send the entire neighborhood into chaos. The palace may have issued its decree thousands of miles away in London, but the shockwaves weren't contained by the Atlantic. They slammed straight into Montecito, California, that quiet enclave of ocean views, celebrity mansions, and discreet luxury, and shattered its calm like a wine glass dropped on marble. Because when King Charles handed Harry's titles to Sir Timothy, it wasn't just a royal family matter anymore. It was a Montecito crisis. And suddenly, neighbors who once casually waved while walking their dogs found themselves at the epicenter of a royal earthquake. Imagine the scene. The winding roads of Montecito, usually silent except for the hum of Teslas and gardeners' leaf blowers, clogged with paparazzi vans. Photographers hanging out of car windows, lenses as long as rifles, camping outside the Sussex gates. Helicopters buzzing overhead, their shadows sliding across the swimming pools of millionaires who had paid for privacy but now found themselves unwilling extras in the biggest scandal of the year. The chaos was immediate. The Sussex mansion, usually a fortress of serenity, turned into a circus tent. Security guards tightened their patrols. Delivery trucks were stopped and searched. Neighbors reported cars parked for hours on street corners. Journalists disguised as joggers. Drones buzzing low over rooftops. The meltdown wasn't just inside Harry and Meghan's home. It was outside, spilling into the lives of everyone around them. And the neighbors? Oh, the neighbors had opinions. Some sympathized. They saw Meghan walking the grounds, Harry ducking into cars, and they whispered, "Poor things. They never get a break." But others rolled their eyes. Because for all the talk of privacy, here was Montecito's most famous couple once again attracting a media storm that disrupted everyone's peace. Why can't they just go quiet? One local was overheard saying at a nearby cafe, "Why does it always have to be drama?" That tension between sympathy and annoyance became the undercurrent of Montecito life in those weeks. On one side, neighbors who felt sorry for the couple, even protective. On the other, neighbors irritated that their tranquil slice of paradise had been turned into Buckingham Palace West, complete with paparazzi and scandal. And the media loved it. Photos of Harry looking grim on his way to the gym. Meghan spotted in sunglasses, phone clutched in hand, walking briskly past cameras. Rumors of heated arguments inside the mansion. Every grainy snapshot became a headline. Every whisper became a story. The frenzy fed itself, and Montecito became the stage. But here's the twist. It wasn't just the press circling. Celebrities in Montecito, accustomed to scandals of their own, suddenly found themselves caught up in royal drama. Imagine running into Oprah at the market, only to find journalists trailing her car, desperate for a quote about her famous neighbors. Imagine Ellen DeGeneres, living just a few streets away, pulling her blinds tighter, knowing the Sussex's saga was now dragging the whole neighborhood into the spotlight. The meltdown wasn't confined to headlines. It was lived, daily, by those who shared a zip code with Harry and Meghan. One neighbor complained of being woken at dawn by helicopters. Another griped that their kids couldn't play outside without paparazzi shouting questions over the hedges. Montecito, the place people came to disappear, suddenly became the most visible place on Earth. And all of it. Every photo, every complaint, every drone buzzing overhead was traced back to one thing: Charles's decision. Because if Harry's titles had stayed intact, if Sir Timothy hadn't been elevated, none of this frenzy would have ignited. The meltdown was proof that the monarchy's moves ripple far beyond palace walls. Inside the Sussex mansion, the atmosphere was equally tense. Meghan, already furious, now faced the humiliation of having her private life exposed through paparazzi photos. Harry, wounded by the loss of his titles, now had to endure the added insult of being hunted in his own neighborhood. Staff were on edge. Security doubled its efforts. Every knock at the door sent pulses racing. Let's ask the audience directly. Can you imagine living like that? Knowing that every time you step outside, a camera is waiting? That every neighborly glance might become tomorrow's gossip? That your home, once a sanctuary, is now the epicenter of global scandal? For Harry and Meghan, this was the paradox. They had fled the palace for freedom, for privacy. And yet here they were, more hounded than ever, their Californian dream turning into a gilded cage. The meltdown also sparked whispers of hypocrisy. Critics pointed out that the couple, who had built careers around telling their story, seemed shocked that people still wanted to hear it. You can't sell your narrative to Netflix, one columnist sneered, and then expect the world to leave you alone when the palace claps back. Fair or not, that perception added fuel to the fire. Suddenly, the Montecito meltdown wasn't just about paparazzi. It was about public opinion, swinging like a pendulum between pity and frustration. And in the midst of this chaos came the rumors. Oh, the rumors. One night, neighbors claimed they saw heated arguments through lit windows. Another swore that Meghan left in a car alone, face hidden, only to return hours later. Some whispered about phone calls to high-powered lawyers. Others insisted that Hollywood producers were circling, eager to capitalize on the drama with new deals. Whether true or not, the rumors spread like wildfire, feeding the frenzy, deepening the meltdown. And then came the flashpoint. One evening, as paparazzi swarmed the gates, a confrontation erupted. Security guards clashed with photographers. Shouts echoed down the street. Cameras flashed like lightning, illuminating Harry's face as he stormed to his car. The images hit tabloids within hours, splashed across front pages with headlines like, "Prince Unhinged." Harry's breaking point. The meltdown was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. For Montecito, the tipping point had arrived. Some neighbors quietly reached out to offer support. Others demanded action, furious that their quiet neighborhood had become a battlefield. Town officials even fielded complaints, pressured to rein in the paparazzi. But how do you regulate global obsession? How do you legislate curiosity? And through it all, Harry and Meghan remained trapped. Too famous to hide. Too scrutinized to live freely. Too proud to retreat. The meltdown was complete, personal, local, global. But here's the kicker. As chaotic as Montecito became, this was only the beginning. Because while Harry and Meghan struggled to manage the fallout in California, Charles and his advisors were plotting their next moves in London. The palace wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And the next chapter in this saga would prove that Charles's decision to strip Harry of his titles wasn't just a punishment. It was part of a much larger, much darker strategy. What came next would reveal the monarchy's long game, and it would shake Harry to his core. From the serene gardens of Buckingham Palace to the candlelit halls of Clarence House, a quiet storm was brewing. While Montecito grappled with helicopters, flashing cameras, and gossiping neighbors, King Charles and his inner circle were executing a strategy so calculated it could only be described as Machiavellian. This was not a simple punitive move, a titular transfer to Sir Timothy. This was chess, and every piece on the board had a purpose. Let's start with the basics. Titles, roles, honors. They aren't just names in a royal ledger. They're symbols. They're power. They determine access, influence, and public perception. And when a king decides to redistribute them, he is sending a message, not just to the person receiving the title, but to the world. Charles's message. Clear. The monarchy is in control. Dissent has consequences. Privilege can be transferred and removed. Think about that for a second. Imagine if your identity, your reputation, your entire public standing could be revoked by someone else's decision. That's exactly what happened to Harry. And the palace knew it. Every advisor, every aide, every secretary had to have been aware of the ripple effect this would create. But what was the palace aiming for exactly? Observers suggest multiple layers. 1. Asserting authority. 2. Managing the public narrative. 3. Re-establishing the monarchy's relevance in a world that increasingly questions hereditary privilege. And 4. Subtly reminding the global elite that proximity to royalty is not permanent. Each layer served a distinct purpose, but combined, they created a strategy of psychological pressure, almost surgical in its precision. Now, here's where it gets even more intriguing. Charles did not act alone. Every decision, from which titles to transfer, to the timing of the announcement, to how it was leaked to certain media outlets, was meticulously orchestrated. Think of the palace as a theater. The audience, both global and local, believed they were witnessing a spontaneous drama. In reality, the script had been written months in advance. The actors were merely following stage directions. Consider the timing of the announcement. It coincided with a period when Harry was under intense scrutiny in Montecito, already struggling with media intrusion. Coincidence? Highly unlikely. This was tactical, designed to amplify embarrassment and ensure maximum visibility. The palace understood human psychology. Chaos in one location, amplified by media coverage, would force the subject, Harry, into a corner, making him reactive rather than proactive. But the game didn't stop there. Beyond titles, Charles leveraged influence over charitable organizations, patronages, and international obligations that had traditionally been Harry's. Every event Harry could have attended, every gala or fundraising opportunity, was subtly redirected to Sir Timothy. The palace sent a message to the world. Harry's roles were negotiable. Sir Timothy was now the official face. And the ripple effect on Harry's public perception was profound. It's also critical to understand the emotional layer of this strategy. Monarchies survive not just on politics, but on sentiment, ceremony, and loyalty. By publicly elevating Sir Timothy, a figure of relative obscurity compared to Harry, the king was signaling to the public that loyalty, obedience, and patience are rewarded, while rebellion carries a cost. This was psychological warfare, dressed as formal decree. And then there's the irony. Sir Timothy, thrust into a role he never asked for, had to navigate the very limelight that Harry had resisted for so long. Suddenly, Montecito wasn't just a royal problem. It was a global case study in power dynamics. The palace, through calculated optics, had successfully created tension on two continents simultaneously. Here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed how in every power struggle, the real moves happen behind the scenes? What the public sees is the result, not the mechanics. Charles's advisors were experts at this. From legal advisors to PR consultants, every angle had been considered. For example, subtle leaks to trusted tabloids hinted at Sir Timothy's exemplary character, while painting Harry as preoccupied and distracted. The story of a dutiful royal versus a wandering prince was seeded intentionally, long before the public even learned of the official title transfer. And the palace's foresight didn't end there. They had anticipated the Montecito meltdown. Every helicopter, every camera flash, every neighbor complaint, calculated collateral damage. By ensuring Harry was already under pressure in a high-profile but personal space, the palace amplified the humiliation. They understood that humans make mistakes when they are emotionally destabilized, and destabilized Harry would be. Now, let's add another layer, global optics. Charles, acutely aware of social media, streaming platforms, and international news cycles, timed announcements to maximize virality. Every photograph of Sir Timothy with a ceremonial sash, every image of Harry looking awkward at a Montecito cafe, was designed to provoke commentary. The palace wasn't just playing in London, it was playing on the world stage. And yet, while all this was happening, the king had to maintain the appearance of fairness, dignity, and decorum. That's why every statement, every press release, every official photograph was meticulously phrased. No one outside the palace would guess the magnitude of the internal maneuvering. To the public, it looked like routine royal adjustments. To those who knew, it was chess at its most ruthless. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine being Harry in this scenario. You wake up in the early hours, scroll through your phone, and see Sir Timothy being lauded for a role that was once yours. You read headlines framing you as the displaced prince, while your neighbor's pool party becomes a global meme. How would you feel? Anger? Betrayal? Confusion? Likely all three, and that was exactly the intended emotional impact. The palace wasn't just redistributing titles. They were engineering a cascade of consequences designed to test loyalty, resilience, and public image. Every decision was both strategic and symbolic. Every action sent multiple messages, to Harry, to Sir Timothy, to Montecito, to the media, and to the world. But perhaps the most audacious part of this long game was the silence. For weeks, Charles said nothing publicly beyond the formal decree. No speeches, no interviews. This silence was golden. It allowed speculation to run rampant, feeding a narrative that the king's authority was unassailable. It created tension, it created curiosity, and it created anxiety. In short, the palace's long game was a masterclass in psychological strategy, optics, and power. It leveraged geography, timing, media, personal relationships, and public sentiment to orchestrate an outcome far beyond a simple title transfer. And yet, for all its precision, it contained one element the palace could not fully control: human emotion. Harry and Meghan were unpredictable. Their allies were unpredictable. Montecito was unpredictable. And in every calculated move, there remained a chance that something would go wrong. A move would be misread. A public reaction would spiral out of control. Which brings us to the cliffhanger, because the palace's strategy, while brilliant on paper, was about to collide with reality in Montecito. A leak, a misstep, a single ill-timed photograph would force Harry to respond. And the world would watch, breathless, as the long game met real-world consequences. What no one expected, not Charles, not the advisors, not even Sir Timothy, was that the next twist would involve not just titles or roles, but a revelation so personal it threatened to redefine everything. And that revelation was about to explode into public view. If there was ever a moment for Sir Timothy to shine, it was now. For years, he had been a quiet figure in royal circles, diligent, competent, but largely invisible to the public. Yet, overnight, he was thrust into a role once held by Prince Harry, a life of scrutiny, expectation, and global fascination. And as Montecito reeled from the fallout of Charles's decree, Sir Timothy's ascent was about to send shockwaves of its own. It began subtly. A formal announcement from the palace, detailing his new titles and responsibilities, arrived via press release. The language was measured, elegant, almost understated. Yet beneath the words lay a seismic shift. Sir Timothy was now, officially, the holder of the duties, patronages, and ceremonial obligations that had defined Harry's public identity. Suddenly, he was the face of initiatives once associated with the Sussexes, the recipient of invitations that had once been Harry's domain, and the subject of countless headlines worldwide. The first reaction from the public was, predictably, disbelief. Social media exploded with memes, speculation, and commentary. Who even is Sir Timothy? Became a trending question. For those who knew him, the answer was simple: a lifelong insider, educated, polished, and loyal to the crown. For everyone else, he was an enigma suddenly elevated to prominence. And as we know, sudden visibility is never quiet. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine your life completely flipped overnight. One day, you're living in relative anonymity. The next, the world's eyes are on you. How would you react? Fear? Excitement? Overwhelm? Sir Timothy faced all three emotions at once, but the palace's long game had prepared him for the optics. Every step, every appearance, was carefully choreographed. And so he stepped out. First came a photo opportunity at a charitable event, where Sir Timothy was presented as a figure of competence and grace. Photographers clicked furiously. Reporters scribbled notes. Social media lit up with commentary on his attire, his demeanor, even his handshake. Every detail was scrutinized, every smile analyzed. This was the price of sudden prominence, and Sir Timothy navigated it with remarkable poise. But as with all things royal, the optics only tell part of the story. Behind the scenes, Sir Timothy was grappling with the immense pressure of filling Harry's shoes. It wasn't merely a ceremonial role, it was a symbolic one. Each title carried expectations, each duty represented years of precedent, and every public interaction had the potential to either validate or undermine his newfound status. He knew the world was watching, and that any misstep could be catastrophic. The palace, of course, had anticipated this. Advisors and strategists provided him with briefing notes, speech coaching, and a meticulous schedule of engagements. Every public appearance was mapped to the minute, every interaction with media carefully planned. But even with preparation, Sir Timothy faced an unpredictable element, the human response. People were resistant to sudden change. Fans of Harry were vocal, critics were merciless, and the press, relentless as ever, searched for the slightest hint of discomfort, hesitation, or scandal. Despite this, Sir Timothy's early performances were widely praised. Observers noted his calm demeanor, his articulate responses, and his ability to handle tricky questions with grace. Comparisons to Harry were inevitable. Of course, the media loves a narrative of replacement. Headlines speculated on his fresh approach, his unflappable composure, and even his hidden charisma. The palace, quietly, was thrilled. The long game was unfolding perfectly, yet there was more to this than mere optics. Sir Timothy's elevation also had political implications. As the new holder of Harry's former duties, he became a conduit between the monarchy and numerous charitable organizations, diplomatic initiatives, and global causes. His actions could influence public perception of the crown, shape media narratives, and even impact international relationships. It was a heavy mantle to bear, and one that required careful calculation at every turn. Meanwhile, Montecito continued to simmer. Harry and Meghan watched from afar as Sir Timothy's image was cultivated, polished, and broadcast to the world. For Harry, it was a bitter pill, seeing someone else occupy a space he had built with years of effort, relationships, and personal investment. For Meghan, it was equally fraught, as she navigated the complex emotions of defending privacy while witnessing the rise of another in the spotlight her family once dominated. But Sir Timothy's ascent was not without friction. Within the palace, subtle tensions simmered. Advisors debated his every move. Some worried that too much visibility might expose him to the same scrutiny Harry endured. Others argued that any misstep could unravel the carefully constructed narrative. And behind closed doors, Charles monitored every interaction, ensuring that his long game remained intact. The situation also created ripple effects among the public. Social media debates raged. Commentators analyzed his every gesture. Fans and critics clashed over his suitability, his demeanor, even his wardrobe choices. It became clear that Sir Timothy's rise was more than a personal journey. It was a national and global event. Every post, every article, every tweet contributed to the unfolding story, further amplifying the stakes. Yet even in the midst of all this attention, Sir Timothy demonstrated remarkable composure. He approached each engagement with a mixture of humility and confidence, carefully balancing deference to tradition with his own emerging persona. Observers noted that while he lacked Harry's celebrity charisma, he made up for it with steadiness, reliability, and an almost invisible yet undeniable authority. For the palace, this was the payoff. The long game required a successor who could embody the roles Harry once held, not through fame or notoriety, but through disciplined execution and unwavering loyalty. Sir Timothy fit the mold perfectly, and as he continued to navigate the media storm, it became increasingly clear that his rise was not merely a replacement, it was a statement. The monarchy could, when necessary, reassert control, reshape narratives, and redefine the hierarchy of influence. And yet, for all the planning, strategy, and careful orchestration, there was one variable the palace could not control: public sentiment. While Sir Timothy's performances were largely successful, the narrative was never fully predictable. Social media trends shifted, tabloids speculated, and global audiences interpreted events in unexpected ways. Every engagement, no matter how polished, carried the risk of unintended consequences. And then, just as the world seemed to acclimate to Sir Timothy's presence, a new development emerged. A leaked photograph, capturing a private moment between Sir Timothy and a high-ranking royal advisor, circulated online. The image was innocuous, yet it ignited speculation. Was this a strategic alliance? A power play? Or merely a candid moment misinterpreted by a hungry media? The leak sent ripples through Montecito, Buckingham Palace, and beyond. Harry's supporters seized it as evidence of the palace's maneuvering. Critics painted it as manipulation. Social media exploded with debate, speculation, and intrigue. And Sir Timothy, suddenly, found himself at the center of a story that no amount of preparation could fully contain. It was a stark reminder that in the royal arena, visibility is double-edged. Success invites scrutiny, influence invites debate, and elevation invites conflict. Sir Timothy had stepped into the spotlight, but the lights were brighter, harsher, and far more relentless than anyone could have anticipated. The chapter closes with a question that will linger in every viewer's mind. Can Sir Timothy maintain his composure, navigate the pressures of global attention, and hold the roles and titles that were so dramatically thrust upon him? Or will the same forces that toppled Harry's peace find a way to challenge him as well? Because in Montecito, in London, and across the world, one thing is certain: the story is far from over. And the next move, by Sir Timothy, by Harry, by Charles, or by someone entirely unexpected, will change everything once again.